The University of Technology in Sydney is lowering the engineering entry bar for female school leavers. They can get into the course with 10 fewer ATAR points, and this is part of a plan to get more women to study engineering and consequently get into the engineering workforce.
Before I begin breaking down this video, let me just say this. As an engineer myself, I'm not against encouraging women to be engineers, because truthfully at university I actually wanted less people, both men and women, to do engineering because damn was the supply of engineering graduates so much higher than the demand of jobs available. But putting my dislike for large hordes of people aside, no one that studied engineering really cared who you were, so long as you actually knew what you were talking about, because that's what mattered. Rewards based on merit, not your gender.
Dee, engineering is a very male-dominated industry and workplace, and apparently that is a big turn-off for women wanting to study engineering in the first place. Is this the way to turn it round?
Look, it is. It's the old saying, if you can't see it, you won't be it. And women look at that sort of field and think, ooh. And I think a lot of people are sort of saying, oh, well, this means women are getting into the course who won't be able to do it. And that's simply not true. More than half of Australian students who enrol in bachelor courses do so without the right ATAR.
Yes, but they allow those students to enter universities based on socio-economic disadvantages or disabilities, not because they're a woman. And just because they allow more people to enter the course, it doesn't always mean a higher number of people will graduate from it.
There's a whole lot of other things universities do. So positive discrimination, we know it works, and it makes the industries better, it makes businesses better, so I think this is a really positive move.
Gareth, Dee's right. A number of universities allocate adjustment points based on disadvantage or illness predominantly, but this is the first time it's been based on gender. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a really good idea to try and encourage more women to study engineering fields, but I'm not 100% convinced that this will work. I think we'll need to wait 5, 6, 7 years to see if in fact it does boost the number of graduates who come through.
Let's just touch on this idea of positive discrimination for a moment. Positive discrimination or affirmative action has been around since the late 60s and was implemented in order to improve social integration and equal opportunity between different races. For example, if you're an African American, you can now get into Harvard with a lower score than someone who was white. While the idea was noble, unfortunately the outcome wasn't always a success. Instead of creating a diverse environment, the difference in admission requirements created an academic mismatch in knowledge. African Americans with lower scores were far more likely to fall behind and receive lower grades than whites because their level of knowledge in subjects before entering college didn't need to be as high, essentially allowing students who in high school only studied mainstream subjects to then be put in the same classes at college with other students who in high school had been studying extension subjects. Over time, more African Americans were entering colleges than white people, but the grades they received on average were much lower and far more of them dropped out. Now, I'm not saying that positive discrimination can't work, because being surrounded by people more able than you can provide an intellectually challenging environment compared to one that isn't as helpful, but that generally only works with small differences in academic level, not significantly large gaps. I'd also say that while 10 ATAR points isn't exactly a large gap, it's still a difference that ironically makes the case for equality harder for women because it rewards efforts not based on merit, but on gender. And that brings up a variety of issues because it implies low expectations of female engineers, as well as being unfair on the women who would have got in anyway at that entrance score. Not to mention that it also opens up the potential for others in the industry to have a skeptical eye on whether or not the women do have the grades for the position they're in.
I had a look at UTS's ATAR ranks already for engineering, and you can get into engineering at UTS if you want to study software or data engineering with an ATAR of about 72. Now, that is not some sort of insurmountable barrier. You can get into electrical engineering with an 82 or an 83. Now, they are not what I would call, it's not like, 97, 98% ATAR that you need to get into medicine or some law courses. So I just wonder whether, in fact, it is the academic requirements on the way in that are stopping women from engineering. I suspect there's probably other things going on. I actually suspect it's because most women don't want to be engineers. Now, this may work. I'm not convinced it will work, but I think that the goal is right. You just got to get the policy right.
Yeah, well, given that, we're all living in buildings and riding public transport and driving cars, I mean, surely, that female input ultimately is got to be a good thing.
Oh, my God, I can't remember how many buildings I've been in where you see something as a woman, you think, no,
the kitchen should not have gone there.
Yeah, whoever designed.
This is getting ridiculous. At this point, I think it's safe to say that the presenters have no clue on what engineers do in life because the examples that they brought up actually relate to interior design and architecture, which is somewhat ironic because they're primarily female-driven professions.
Yeah, some toilets in airports, you just go, no, you need somewhere for your makeup bag.
Just on that point, toilets everywhere, all over the world. How often do you stand outside public toilets and there's a queue for women?
Yes.
And no queue for men, and men are running in and out and the women are queued up.
You think it's efficient to get rid of women?
You ever see a line for the men's room? Are you do you hear me, Summer?
Someone, please, out there, provide more female toilets in public spaces.
It seems like they think that there's some evil group of male engineers out there who are scheming away in the back room saying, yes, we shall engineer every female bathroom to be a severely complicated design which maximizes the amount of time they shall spend there so that all the men in the world will get to spend more time away from them and the peace shall finally be returned. Another fine example of our ingenious social engineering. I mean, just look at her face. She looks so proud of herself, almost like she's just finished delivering an epic speech.
I have a dream today.
In conclusion, more women in engineering isn't a bad thing, but when it gets to a point where people are being hired or accepted solely for their race or gender, instead of merit and what they actually know, then there's cause for concern. Because we've gone from finding the right person for the right job to finding the right gender for the right job, which is just crazy when you think about it. Thankfully, I'm glad there's still some sense out there, because the comments on the video gave me hope for humankind. So shout out to all the people who realize why it actually makes the case for equality harder for women, and just how ridiculous some of those remarks by the television hosts were.
Absolutely.
Can someone, please, out there, provide more female toilets in public spaces?
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.